We're in the afterglow of the Amy Coney Barrett confirmation. Cheers all around, high fives all around.
Huzzah.
To Jonathan Keller, joining me as always right here on Right to Life Radio. I am John Gerardi. Thank you all so much for listening. Right to Life Radio, as always, a production of Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org.
It's finally, John, longing fulfilled after a long, 27 months from when we first were hoping that she was going to be nominated.
Right. Yeah, well, because we wanted her to be nominated rather than Brett Kavanaugh. And in hindsight, maybe it would have been easier. Maybe it would have been easier to get her confirmed.
I mean, God bless you, Brett Kavanaugh, but...
Yeah. I mean, you could have gotten Murkowski to vote yes. Probably Manchin would have voted yes. Yeah, I think she probably could have gotten confirmed.
I think so.
You know, whatever.
Hey,
she's on the court now. She's on the court now. You know, better late than never. So I want to talk, and I did a segment like this for the John Gerardi show earlier in the week, 6 to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, right here on Power Talk. I did a segment like this for the John Gerardi show, but I want to kind of give, for all of you out there, a little history, a history of our efforts to secure a pro-life court and how Amy Barrett is in some ways the culmination of that long and storied history, and how important her nomination is and confirmation is in the grand historical thing. So, Jonathan, I will elaborate this history, and you feel free to jump in and
given the fact that only one of us at this table actually studied under Justice
Barrett. Yes, that's true. In fairness, she did not teach us about this. She was teaching us evidence law and playing clips from My Cousin Vinny to help explain it to us, which was a really great way of doing it. Anyway.
Just a quick side note on that. When do you think we'll get the first My Cousin Vinny citation in an opinion?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, if it's something that has to do with election. I don't know. I don't know what kind of a writer she is. I get the sense. Gorsuch. Okay. This is a thing I'm hating more and more about various kinds of court decisions.
Oh, dear.
And Gorsuch leans into this.
You don't like the Elena Kagan Hamilton references? And
being cutesy with how you write, and Gorsuch loves that. He's just such a fun-loving guy, and he talks like this. He's so excited about,
his religious liberty opinion on we are not permitted to favor Caesar's Palace over Calvary Chapel. Come on, that was like gold.
Yeah. I just don't like the cutesiness. I don't like anyway.
Should be dried and boring.
Yes.
Legal jargon.
Well, be serious. I don't know. Anyway, this is my pet peeve. Anyway. So 1973 Roe v. Wade happens. And overnight, the United States goes from having some of the most conservative and restrictive abortion laws in the world to some of the most liberal and permissive abortion laws in the world. And those of us in the pro-life movement are faced with this enormous challenge. Because of the nature of Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, we're presented with this question. How do we fix this? Our only options open to us are either a constitutional amendment guaranteeing the right to life, which is well nigh impossible. You need 2/3 of both the House and the Senate to agree to it. You need 3/4 of all the state legislatures to agree with it, and there's simply not that much of a pro-life movement at that time to accomplish it, and there never would be. So you either need a constitutional amendment, because, again, what the Supreme Court did in Roe v. Wade basically they said that the Constitution itself protects the right to abortion. So that means that you can't simply pass a law, right? If the Constitution says X, you cannot have a normal law be passed that says not X. If the Constitution says X, you can't just have a majority in the House, majority in the Senate, and the president sign off, pass a normal law saying not X. It's unconstitutional.
John,
you can't have a state legislature do that.
But that would seem to be anti-democratic and counter-majoritarian.
It is, which is the whole point of the Constitution, is that it incorporates certain things that are so important that they shouldn't just be left up to a majority vote. Okay, if your right to freedom of speech can be taken away when the other political party gets in power, then it's not really much of a right. Okay, so that's why it's in the Constitution. Anyway. So 1973, we're faced with this impossible mountain. We got not just a bad Supreme Court decision, but a 7-2 Supreme Court decision. So our options are either amend the Constitution or elect presidents who will nominate new Supreme Court justices who will reverse Roe. And this desire to reverse Roe sort of dovetailed with the desire of other legal conservatives to fix lots of other cases that they thought were bad. People from the Federalist Society, people like Antonin Scalia, people like Robert Bork, people who started the Federalist Society as this way of fighting back against various kinds of I won't say atextual, but various decisions from the Supreme Court during the 20th century and into the 21st century that misinterpreted statutes, that reinterpreted the Constitution in ways that were divorced from the very text of the Constitution itself. And Antonin Scalia wanted to create a movement to reverse that, and that's what the Federalist Society was. And their way of trying to reverse it was to say, well, let's stick with the text. Let's stick with the actual text and the accepted public meaning of those texts, either statutes or the Constitution itself, and try to read them as they are written or according to the accepted public meaning of those statutes at the time they were adopted. Not importing into the ambiguities of the Constitution all of our modern-day values and preferences and policy prescriptions, which is what more or less the Supreme Court did in Roe v. Wade. I think what the Supreme Court did in Roe v. Wade, it's quite clear, they weren't looking at the history of the 14th Amendment. They weren't looking at what it was believed to have meant. They basically said, well, we're feminists, and the mood of the time in the early 70s, the accepted sort of political viewpoint in the Harvard Law School faculty lounge in 1973 is that, yeah, women should probably have the right to abortion. I mean, if you're going to have equality with men, then you got to be able to walk away from a pregnancy and be as unburdened by a pregnancy as a man is. So let's sort of craft an abortion law, pretend it's in the Constitution, and we'll craft and we'll divide the pregnancy up into trimesters, and you can regulate it this way in the first trimester. Which is not the court doing law. They're not seeing things in the text of the Constitution and interpreting them. They're just making stuff up. They're just making up their preferred policy prescriptions.
Maybe Fourth Amendment? Fourth Amendment?
Yeah.
Emanations
kind of. Kind of. You can read it something if you. Amendment. Maybe you can see it in there.
John. On that note, I don't know if I showed you this photo, but I might have. But when I was in D.C. about a year ago, Clarence Thomas's law clerks took us on a tour, and we saw he had a sign that someone had given him in his chambers that said, it looked like, a street sign, like a warning sign, and it said, please do not emanate into the penumbra.
Clarence Thomas is the best. Anyway. So the Federalist Society sort of took on the pro-life movement, in a sense, and a lot of pro-life people, Federalist Society, because the thought was, well, I guess with originalism, we can get a pro-life outcome because there's no way that Roe v. Wade would have been decided by an originalist court, and we can return the question to the states, allow states to overturn legalized abortion. So that was the effort. And for years and years and years, Republican presidents kept getting elected by religious voters who cared about the abortion issue. Presidents like Reagan, presidents like George H.W. Bush, presidents like George W. Bush, and finally, President Trump. And they kept nominating Supreme Court justices with a terrible batting average. And with a terrible batting average, they kept nominating people who kept stabbing us in the back. The watershed moment for this was 1992, when Anthony Kennedy, David Souter, and Sandra Day O'Connor, three of the five Supreme Court justices appointed by George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan, stabbed us in the back and upheld Roe v. Wade, changing the rules of the game somewhat, but more or less letting Roe stand. But with Planned Parenthood versus Casey, we were allowed to nibble away at legalized abortion, pass restrictions around the perimeters of it, pass more health and safety regulations, informed consent laws, requiring that minors receive permission or notification from their parents before they could have an abortion. And these laws around the fringes, particularly the ban on partial birth abortion, because of the public debate it engendered, and first a negative Supreme Court decision saying you can't ban partial birth abortion, and then a positive Supreme Court decision in 2007 saying you can ban partial birth abortion. Thank you, Justice Alito, for that. That was the only thing that changed between 2000 and 2007 was Alito replacing Sandra Day O'Connor. It started shifting public opinion on abortion and made the pro-life movement a more and more critical, important component in electoral politics, particularly on the Republican side. It became such an important thing that Donald Trump in running in 2016 and looking at the Supreme Court and seeing all of its octogenarians and septuagenarians, said, you know what? I know a lot of conservatives don't trust me. A lot of pro-lifers don't trust me. Here's my list. Here are all the people I would nominate to the Supreme Court. And it allowed conservatives and pro-lifers to look at it and say, that's a pretty good list. A lot better of a lot less opportunity for people to stab us in the back than we'd have if Hillary Clinton, a lot fewer opportunities to stab us in the back than George H.W. Bush had, and certainly a better list than anything Hillary Clinton's going to put up.
And to be fair to people who might be critiquing, well, why did Trump feel the need to do that? To be fair, he did hint and say, well, maybe I'll just put my sister on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, his sister, who is a radically left-wing pro-abortion judge, who would be a shockingly horrible choice. Anyway.
But to his credit and his advisor's credit, he said, yeah, maybe I need to shore up my bona fides among the pro-lifers.
And he did. And frankly, I think it was a key reason why he won the presidency in 2016 was he allowed pro-lifers to have some leeway to think, well, if I vote for this man, he's at least saying all the right things about the kinds of policies he would support. Well, that turned out to the 2016 election turned out to be decisive. This is an argument I'm going to make. I know everyone on talk radio always says every election that this is the most important election of our lifetime. I do not think that. I do not think that about the 2020 election. I think, objectively speaking, the 2016 election was more important. And you know why? Because in the 2016 election, there were 3 Supreme Court seats on the line.
Yes.
And the question was, would Hillary Clinton fill them? Rabidly pro-choice Hillary Clinton? Or would Donald Trump fill them? And that question has been decided. Donald Trump filled them. And instead of, I don't know, name your 3 names. I don't know. Barack Obama, not out of the realm, as producer Raphael laughs, not out of the realm of possibility, producer Raphael. Would not be the first time a former president was named to the Supreme Court.
William Howard Taft.
Yeah, William Howard Taft was famously president and then a Supreme Court justice.
The Chief Justice.
Yeah. So you could have had Barack Obama, I don't know.
Sri Srinivasan, who's now D.C. Circuit.
Yeah, and I don't know, Keith Olbermann, whatever. Let's name someone crazy. And we could have seen
No. I'm sorry, John. We got to bring this back to last week.
Oh, Ian Millhiser. He's our favorite. We love him.
Jeffrey Toobin.
Jeffrey Toobin. Oh, Jeffrey Toobin. If you don't know why we're laughing, just Google Jeffrey Toobin very carefully.
It would have been, yes.
Yeah, very carefully. That was the
Something's
CNN,
going on under those robes.
Yeah, the CNN. Oh, gosh. That would make for some really bad virtual Supreme Court hearings.
Oy vey.
Oh, geez. I thought this was muted. You can't mute a video, Jeffrey. All right. Anyway, for those who don't know.
It's a family show.
Anyway, whatever.
Yes.
Just Google Jeffrey Toobin if you don't know what
you'll
we're talking about. You'll get it. So instead, what Hillary Clinton would have had is a 6-3 liberal majority on the Supreme Court, a 6-3 pro-choice majority on the court. And what we might have now is a genuine 6-3 majority willing to overturn Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. So this Justice Barrett's confirmation is, in a way, the coronation of everything that the pro-life movement has worked for since 1973. She is the crowning achievement of this political movement in a certain sense. I think she is the single greatest thing. Her nomination and confirmation to the court are the single greatest thing that Donald Trump has done in his entire presidency. And frankly, I don't care if Trump serves another 4 years. I think she still might be the greatest thing in his whole presidency. It's the greatest thing McConnell has done in his leadership as the Republican majority leader in the Senate. When we come back, a case the Supreme Court may well take out of Mississippi that might show us how the court would overturn Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Next on Right to Life Radio on Power Talk 96.7 AM 1400, the iHeartRadio app, rtlcc.org for Right to Life of Central California. Diana Ross and the Supremes with Baby Love here on Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much for listening to Right to Life Radio. By the way, for any of you Catholics who may be interested, or non-Catholics, I guess, open to anybody, at Holy Spirit Catholic Church Sunday evening at 6 p.m., we will be having the closing, a mass for the closing of 40 Days for Life. So 6 p.m. at Holy Spirit Catholic Church. We'll be there. So if any of you want to attend, feel free to attend. It's going to be outdoors, so bring a lawn chair and a mask. And yeah, it should be a wonderful thing meeting with the bishop. Bishop Brennan is a big-time supporter of Right to Life of Central California, and we're very
even
grateful to him.
A member of the 300 Club.
A 300 Club supporter. Yes, indeed, he is. So our thanks to Bishop Brennan for supporting us and our work. Again, that's 6 p.m. Sunday evening at Holy Spirit Catholic Church. All right. As we've been saying, as I said in the last segment, Amy Barrett's confirmation is kind of the culmination of the work of the pro-life movement since 1973. We knew after Roe v. Wade we would either need to amend the Constitution or have a sea change on the Supreme Court, and I think she represents that sea change. So how would the court exactly overturn Roe v. Wade? What would it look like? There is a case that the Supreme Court is deciding this week whether or not they are going to take it. A case emanating from Mississippi. Here's what it says. This is a story written by our least favorite reporter, Kate Smith, who is a reporter for CBS News, who writes about abortion issues almost exclusively, who is so in the tank for the abortion industry, it's completely ridiculous. This is the gal who did basically a softball interview with the new president of Planned Parenthood. Hey, how are you liking your new job? This is so exciting for you. Wow. What's your favorite color? Anyway, I don't think she asked that. That's an exaggeration. But this was not exactly hard-hitting journalism. All right. So here's what she has to say. The Mississippi Attorney General petitioned the Supreme Court again on Thursday to review the state's 15-week abortion ban, a case that directly challenges Roe v. Wade and has the potential to reverse the landmark 1973 decision. The request came just hours after Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee voted to approve Amy Coney Barrett's nomination to the High Court. The full Senate voted to confirm her on Monday. In the 7-page supplemental brief, Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch pointed to separate abortion-related cases where federal appeals court judges have extracted different interpretations of the Supreme Court's decision in June Medical Services v. Russo, the court's most recent abortion case, which struck down a Louisiana abortion regulation. While some courts have cited the majority opinion to block other abortion restrictions, others have instead used Chief Justice John Roberts' concurrence to rule in favor of regulations that hinder abortion access. Note the language that Kate Smith uses, abortion access. Yeah, she's singing perfectly from the hymn book of Planned Parenthood. Fitch noted that hearing Mississippi's defense of its 15-week abortion ban would give the Supreme Court an opportunity to clarify how lower courts should interpret its precedent. So this is important for a number of reasons. Number one, when does the Supreme Court hear cases? The key thing for the Supreme Court to hear cases, because they get thousands of petitions every year for cases, and they only hear something like 80 cases in a year. So how do they choose? The key thing for the Supreme Court is it a question of federal law where you have different federal circuit courts that are in disagreement with each other? That is the key. If you can prove that, if you can show that in your petition to the Supreme Court, that is when they are most likely to accept it.
Commonly referred to in industry parlance as a circuit split.
A circuit split. That's what you need. You need different circuit courts. And for those who don't know, the circuit courts are the federal appellate courts. They are broken up by different regions of the country. They're numbered. So the First Circuit hears all of the appeals from the federal courts, the federal district courts in basically the various states of Massachusetts. The Second Circuit hears all of the appeals from New York and I forget, one or two other states. We live in the Ninth Circuit, which hears all of the appeals from California, Oregon, Washington State, Hawaii, Alaska, and a bunch of other western states. So if the Ninth Circuit has ruled one way on some issue of federal law, and the Third Circuit has ruled in the opposite way on the same question of federal law, so they are disagreeing on what federal law is, that's when you need the Supreme Court to come in and resolve it. So what Mississippi is doing is saying, look, we have this ban on abortion that our legislature passed at 15 weeks. And, we have different opinions about how the court's most recent abortion case should be interpreted. So, hey, Supreme Court, you should decide this. So that is the question before the court. Should we take on this case? And this would be a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade. Now, we will dig into the nature of how this is a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade right after this break. Because this is really important, okay? The way that the justices decide whether or not to take it, all of that sort of plays into this. It's really important. This could be the vehicle, potentially be the vehicle for overturning Roe. We'll explain how after the break. Right to Life Radio from Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Diana Ross and the Supremes here on Right to Life Radio. It's Diana Ross week, apparently, here on Right to Life Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. All right, Jonathan.
Alrighty.
Now that Justice Barrett's on the court, the gloves are off. How are we going to overturn Roe v. Wade? Well, we're trying to explain that to all of you. So
I was informed, John, that it's just kind of magical. Like she just stands there and like Thanos, she puts on the pro-life infinity gauntlet and snaps her fingers and...
It's like a gauntlet, and there's Kavanaugh on the one thing, and Gorsuch on the. I can't believe I'm doing
the
this.
Infinity
This is
Stones.
The nerdiest.
I'm so proud of
I've
you.
ever made.
You're not the first one to make it, though.
Oh, there we are. Okay, and then there's Planned Parenthood disintegrating.
That's right.
She snapped her fingers.
Ta-da!
So, anyway.
It's that easy, John. I mean, that's all the leftists who were protesting outside of the Supreme Court and in D.C. when I was there a month ago. Essentially, just the very act of her being sworn in actually now means that Roe v. Wade is overturned.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It immediately gets overturned. No, that's not how it works. Basically, the way it has to get overturned is you have to have a case. You have to have a case that gets to the Supreme Court. And if it doesn't get to the Supreme Court, the court can't overrule it. So Mississippi has sent a petition to the Supreme Court to hear a case on its 15-week abortion ban. And the state of Mississippi passed a law to try to ban abortion after 15 weeks. They're trying to see, well, is some portion of this upheld or overturned by Roe v. Wade? Is some portion of this law upheld or overturned by the Supreme Court's most recent decision in June, Medical Services v. Russo? And as we explained in the last segment, the Supreme Court does not take a lot of cases in a year. All right, the most cases they will take in a year. So they receive thousands and thousands of petitions, but they will only take on 87 cases or so, 80 something cases in the course of a year. And the chief way they do it is by looking for something that has a circuit split. Okay, if one of the appellate circuit courts says X and the other circuit court says Y, then the Supreme Court needs to come in to resolve the split between the circuits. And one of the things we see is that the June Medical Services v. Russo case, so basically it was this weird thing where John Roberts said, yeah, I agree that basically it had to do with health and safety regulations on abortion clinics and whether you could impose an admitting privileges requirement on doctors who do abortions. So basically what happened in June Medical Services was the state of Louisiana passed a law saying if you're an abortion provider in Louisiana, you have to have admitting privileges at a hospital within a 30-mile radius. This would have resulted in a bunch of abortion clinics shutting down. And the question was, is this something that should be upheld? Is this an undue burden on abortion? Is this something that is in that category? John Roberts, in 2016, thought that was a constitutional thing that a state government could do. He then changed his position in 2020, saying, I still think it's a constitutional thing for a state government to do, but I'm not going to overturn a Supreme Court decision that's only 4 years old because of stare decisis, the sort of vague idea that we should stand with decided things.
Latin, stare decisis is Latin for screw the conservatives.
Yeah, basically that's what it means. And so John Roberts wound up being the fifth vote for the liberals. But then circuit courts afterwards have said, okay, are you just are you just saying that these laws in this case can't stand, but in other cases they can? Like, what are you saying, John Roberts? And different circuits have interpreted it in different ways. So Mississippi wants the Supreme Court, hey, bring some clarity to this decision you just offered, because you have different circuit courts issuing different rulings. But Mississippi's law on abortion is more expansive than that. Basically, Mississippi's law said, the law that Mississippi tried to pass, but which has been basically blocked from enforcement in the courts, is all abortions after 15 weeks are more or less abolished after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And this is a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade. Okay, so for those who don't understand what Roe v. Wade did, and there are still to this day, I will run into people who are like, I don't like abortion, but Roe v. Wade has to stay. I mean, you have to give women that option. And people will say that as thinking that there's some great moderates.
Yeah.
And they're like,
I'm reasonable.
Yeah, I'm reasonable. What they don't understand is that it's not just Roe v. Wade itself, and really we're not even really talking about Roe v. Wade. We're more talking about Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is the 1992 case that sort of succeeded Roe. It's Planned Parenthood versus Casey in combination with a case that was passed the same day as Roe v. Wade called Doe versus Bolton. All right. So for both Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, it gave state governments and Congress or whatever legislature wants to, it gave them the ability to ban certain kinds of late-term abortions. For Roe v. Wade, it was abortions in the third trimester. For Planned Parenthood versus Casey, it was abortions after fetal viability, which is somewhere around 22, 23 weeks. But you could only ban abortion during that late period if you had an exception for the mother's health. What is the mother's health? What does health mean? Well, Doe versus Bolton, which was issued the same day as Roe, defines what health means. And in that case, they defined health in such an expansive, humongous fashion that it's basically the exception that swallows the rule. It's such an enormous definition of health that it includes everything from emotional health, psychological health, to familial health. As in, like, my family dynamic will be upset if I have this baby. So basically it means any pregnancy that you don't want definitionally impacts a mother's health adversely enough so that she can have an abortion. So that's why I say all the time that Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey legalized abortion all over the country for 40 weeks of pregnancy for any reason. You might have an individual state with a law in the books that says abortion after viability is illegal, but it always has that health exception. So Mississippi basically is passing a 15-week abortion ban, which is before fetal viability, so it violates Planned Parenthood versus Casey in that way.
Directly and on purpose.
But it also violates Doe v. Bolton because its health exception is much narrower. Okay? So this is the kind of thing that violates Planned Parenthood versus Casey and is grounds for the Supreme Court possibly to take it up. Now, the defense that the liberals are saying is that, well, there might be a circuit split about how, like, admitting privileges laws should work, but there's no circuit split about Planned Parenthood versus Casey and then its major holding. Everyone's affirming Planned Parenthood versus Casey. Well, yeah, because Planned Parenthood versus Casey's been on the books for a bazillion years, and everyone has known that Anthony Kennedy's not going to reverse his own decision, so no one's challenging it. Everyone's just sort of upholding it when it comes around. So the Supreme Court has to have some ability to review a bad former decision. Now,
otherwise you're locked in to Dred Scott from the 1850s.
Right, exactly. You'd be locked in, or whatever other terrible decision the court made. If the circuits just followed the Supreme Court, the old Supreme Court holding, and didn't disagree with it, then yeah, you're stuck. So now, the other thing about when the Supreme Court decides to take a case, and Jonathan, you can affirm this, I'm sure you've read about this. You only need 4 of the 9 justices to agree to
Yes.
take a case. That's all you need. You only need 4 of the 9. And this is key. This is why having Justice Barrett on the court is so important. Because even if, worst case scenario, Roberts doesn't want to take it and he gets one of the other conservatives to join him in not wanting to take it. Okay? Maybe he gets Kavanaugh along with him to not want to take it. In that case, it doesn't matter. You've still got 4 conservatives with Barrett, Thomas, Alito, and Gorsuch who are like, yeah, let's take it.
And John, I have to tell you, this is something that I've seen some of my friends on the left that are so just beside themselves with frustration. They're like, well, maybe we can pack the Supreme Court. Well, maybe we can, change the, judicial review and what they can review. And the most interesting thing I heard someone say, because of this very reason, I think, well, what if we pass a law that says now you need to have 6 justices vote?
Yeah.
To take a case.
Then maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe that's a good question. So, at any rate, this is the issue that is before. So this case presents a real opportunity potentially to actually overturn Roe, and it highlights again the insanity of Roe. Look, a ban on abortion after 15 weeks. This is not a crazy idea. All right, I don't know what percentage of abortions happen before 15 weeks of pregnancy, Jonathan? It's probably something like 80 or 90% of all abortions happen after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And I mean, a 15-week-old baby, is not viable to survive outside the womb, chiefly because its lung capacity is not developed. By the way, people talk about fetal viability like it's this really important thing, like this really important milestone for human development. Fetal viability is chiefly a measure of your lung capacity.
Yep.
That's the chief thing that determines whether or not you can survive outside the womb. It's whether or not your lungs are developed enough. Like, if they're developed enough, you can survive outside the womb. If not, they're not. So a 15-week abortion ban is not some crazy radical idea. It's 95%. I'm just guessing here. I don't know the exact number, but it's the overwhelming majority of abortions happen before 15 weeks of pregnancy. By the time you get to 15 weeks of pregnancy, the child in your womb is clearly, unmistakably, genuinely a human being, a human organism. It has arms, it has legs, it has hands, it has feet, it has fingers, it has toes. He or she has a heartbeat. He or she has brain activity. This is a human being. This is a human organism. And most people looking at a 15-week-old child would say, nope, that you cannot. No, that's a human being. So it's not an insane thing to ban that. But because of Roe v. Wade and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, you cannot ban abortion after 15 weeks. You can't even ban abortion after 15 weeks with like a health exception. You absolutely cannot put any sort of blanket ban on abortions prior to fetal viability. It's just impossible. And that's the legacy of Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, because those Supreme Court decisions say the ability to have an abortion during that time frame is in the Constitution of the United States of America. It's embedded in there as a freedom of the American people, protected by these counter-majoritarian measures that is so extreme that the only way you could change it is with a constitutional amendment. Okay, in a certain sense, they've made the right to have an abortion before fetal viability as important, if not more important, than your right to talk about politics, your First Amendment right to free speech, your Second Amendment right to own a gun, your Third Amendment right not to have soldiers quartered in your house, your Fourth Amendment right not to have your house searched without a warrant. They genuinely have put the right to abortion at that plane, where a state legislature can't just pass a law saying, yeah, soldiers can live in your house. Yeah, we don't need a warrant to search your home. Yeah. Take all your guns away. Yeah. You're not allowed to speak anymore. We're censoring all content by Christians or whatever. You're not allowed to go to church anymore. That's the level that abortion is protected at. So it hinders the abilities of state governments like Mississippi trying to do this reasonable thing, 15-week abortion ban, not a crazy idea. Okay? There are countries in Europe that are more restrictive than Mississippi.
abortion bans.
There are countries in Europe with a first trimester abortion ban. There are countries in Europe with stricter abortion laws than Mississippi. If you say that to most pro-choice liberals in the United States, they will literally faint at the notion that Mississippi is more accommodating of abortion rights than I think France. I think France actually is after the first trimester. It's not allowed. Anyway, I might be mistaken on that. I know there are countries in Europe that ban it after the first trimester. So that is what Justice Barrett is being called to decide: is will we review fundamentally this question of whether or not state legislatures have no role in just putting a ban on abortion in certain periods of time. That is the question before the court. So let's hope we'll know by next week's show if they're going to take this case or not. Let's hope they take the case. Let's cross our fingers that they take this case, because if they do, we could see the end of Roe v. Wade this year if they take this case. It would be unbelievable. I never thought I would live to see it, but it could be happening. Closing thoughts after the break. This is Right to Life Radio from Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. Diana Ross with us for this closing segment of Right to Life Radio. Baby, where'd our love go? Thank you so much for listening. This show is, of course, brought to you by Right to Life of Central California, rtlcc.org. If you like what we're doing, support what we're doing, you can go to rtlcc.org and join the 300 Club. The 300 Club is where you can, for $25 a month, that's $300 a year, support the work of Right to Life of Central California. And it would mean a lot to us if basically everyone listening to this show, we know how many of you listen, if everyone listening to this show were to give $25 a month to Right to Life, we'd basically never need to hold a fundraiser again. So if you like what you're hearing and want to support us, rtlcc.org, you can click the donate button or click that 300 Club button right there at the top. I have some new signups for the 300 Club that I want to acknowledge on the radio. Santiago and Raquel Duran, Chris Squires, Agent Squires, the producer of this very program. Squires, hey. Thank you so much, Agent Squires. Michael Parker, Amber Spencer, Mary Helen Salcido, Teresa Trevino, Jacob Depew, Joey Soto, Bernadette Sowards, Amber Spencer, Charlotte Pappin, Ermelinda Sanchez, Trust All Roofing, and Dick and Luke Cagley. Well, Dick Cagley, Dick, you didn't need to do that. We know you're already a big-time supporter of us anyway. So thank you all so much to all of our supporters. Okay, this is the last broadcast before the election, Jonathan.
Yes, yes.
So, all of you listening, let me make this clear for you. The one thing that we can actually endorse from Right to Life of Central California, because we're a 501c3, we can't endorse candidates. But the one thing we can endorse is to vote no on Prop 14.
Hey.
Vote no on Prop 14. Those of you watching the YouTube video of this, you can see. Vote pro-life, vote no on Prop 14. I won't say vote twice no on Prop 14 because that's illegal, but vote no on Prop 14. Tell all your family and friends who ask you, hey, well, should I vote on those ballot initiatives? Say, I don't know about all the rest of them, but vote no on Prop 14. That is the important thing. It is the embryo destructive stem cell research thing. Vote no on Prop 14. Now, Jonathan, in this last sort of minute of the show, one thing we're hearing from the Biden campaign is they are promising to pass a piece of legislation called the Equality Act. Now, the Equality Act has to do with a bunch of LGBT issues, which are not sort of within Right to Life's wheelhouse. They're definitely in California Family Council's wheelhouse.
Yes, indeed.
But the Biden campaign is promising to pass it in the first 100 days that Biden's in office.
That's correct.
Here's the thing. Biden can only pass it in the first 100 days he's in office if the Republicans don't filibuster it. So that means one of two things. It means that either the Democrat Senate is going to abolish the filibuster in the Senate, or that he thinks the Republicans aren't going to have the intestinal fortitude to filibuster it. If he's going to abolish the filibuster in the Senate, that means some bad news for pro-lifers, okay? It means that there are pieces of abortion legislation that they could pass that could basically apply the dictates of Roe v. Wade on a national scale, making an overturning of Roe v. Wade basically meaningless. There's all kinds of bad things that could happen as a result of it. So, again, you know, we don't give endorsements on this show for candidates or political parties. But I will say, just point out, that the Trump administration has done almost everything we have wanted it to do on the abortion question. The only way in which the Trump administration has, in any sense, failed on the abortion question is with embryo-destructive stem cell research and federal funding for it. They have not cut off the federal funding for embryonic stem cell research. They've cut off funding for fetal tissue research, but not embryonic stem cell research. It's the one way in which the Trump administration has sort of not done what we as pro-lifers would want.
Yes.
Other than that, 3 Supreme Court justices, the Mexico City policy, you know, pushing, while not successfully attaining, overturning the various pro-choice provisions of the Affordable Care Act. There's not much more you could have asked for from the Trump administration when it comes to pro-life things.
Especially with only the first 2 years of a united government.
Right. With the Biden administration, they are opposed to our viewpoints on lots and lots and lots of things. So, again, we don't give endorsements. I'm just pointing out the factual scenarios. There are obviously they have lots of different positions on lots of different issues. If you would like to hear me on election night breaking down the election in a non-501c3 compliant capacity, by the way, I just want to let you all know there will be a special broadcast of the John Gerardi Show from 6 to 8 p.m. on election night. And afterwards, we will have from 8 to 10 p.m. the full Power Talk team giving election night coverage. Me, Trevor Carey, Tal Cloud, and other guests will be coming in. So I will be on the radio from 6 to 10 p.m. on election night. Broadcasting live. So if you want to catch that, you can listen to Power Talk from 6 to 10 p.m. on election night. Maybe have Fox News on the TV on mute, and you can listen to me on the radio, you know, if you want to go crazy. That's going to do it for us. Thank you to Louis Prima for playing us out. We'll be either very happy or very sad next week, Jonathan.
Crossing fingers.
For a number of reasons. This has been Right to Life Radio, rtlcc.org for Right to Life of Central California.